So yesterday, Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir, released his annual letter to shareholders, and there's a lot of great content in it. It's definitely worth a read. Now, a lot of other YouTubers have already gone into pretty significant detail about the contents of that letter, but I wanted to highlight one point because it really speaks to the future of the company and how the executive team is serious when they say that Palantir is going to be the most important software product in the world, and how they are really looking at taking over from the current market players because they have a completely different approach. So let me quickly just read a short excerpt from Karp's letter, and I'll give you my take on it and why I think this indicates that Palantir is preparing to take on the likes of Facebook and Google and all of the other massive Silicon Valley companies. So Karp says that the software industry today has become an extractive enterprise. Most of the largest consumer internet companies in Silicon Valley have built software products whose principal value is that they enable the efficient extraction and monetization of our personal information. And this point right here is the key difference that Karp is trying to highlight and say that Palantir is exactly the opposite, not going to be focused on the extraction and monetization of people's personal data. Continuing on though, Karp says, "We are the product for sale, not the software. Our inner lives are for sale. It is also increasingly clear that the value of such software, which is essentially parasitic and constructed for the purpose of monetizing a host, can be ephemeral and fragile." And in my opinion, these are some serious shots fired across the bow of the largest companies currently in Silicon Valley and the way that they operate, the way that they do business. And Palantir is trying to take a completely different approach where the software itself is where the value resides, not in the data of the individual customers. And yes, I know this is just an annual letter to shareholders and it doesn't really hold that much weight, but I think it's really indicative of the direction that the company is going in. And I think this type of language is actually going to resonate with a lot of people, a lot of companies for sure that want to keep their own access to their data, that want to have complete ownership over their data, but also with individuals, because as we've seen recently, there's an increasing focus on personal privacy, and the way that companies like Meta or Facebook do business just completely invades everything. And we've become accustomed to that, we've become used to it, but it doesn't mean that it's right, and it certainly doesn't mean that we like it. So in one sense, this is a battle for market share, but in another sense, it's kind of a values-based philosophical battle for the future of the software industry. And it's gonna be really interesting to see how this plays out and which side is gonna win. Now, the thing with Palantir's business model is that in order to actually make money off of it, people have to see the value of the product and they have to be willing to pay for it. Versus in the case of companies like Meta or Facebook, they offer their services for free and then monetize based off of the data. And the reason why the latter approach is so attractive, at least to individuals, is that of course we don't want to pay to use a service like Facebook. We are then willing to accept the invasion of our personal privacy in order to not have to pay for it. And so while on a B2B level, Palantir can certainly convince large companies and governments of the value of the product and to also pay for the product, I think at some point down the road, if Palantir is trying to break into the B2C market, which is not confirmed, absolutely not, but a lot of people have speculated that that's the only way they'll be able to actually exceed that $1 trillion market cap and, you know, be on par with some of the largest companies in the world. But if they are trying to do that, they might have some difficulties with their fundamental approach to how the software is sold and where the value lies and whether or not people are actually willing to pay for it. Because obviously a lot of people have made the decision to forego privacy and to sell their personal data in order to not have to actually pay to use the product or service that we're talking about. Anyways, I thought this letter was great. It really clearly articulates what Palantir's values are and what its vision is for the future. Definitely worth a read if you're an investor in Palantir or thinking about investing in Palantir. And great timing with this coming out on Valentine's Day, just a couple days before the Q4 earnings report. So very curious to see how that goes. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you might also like this one or this one, and I'll see you later.